And I'm joined now on the pod by John Garcia Jr. He's the director of recruiting for Sports Illustrated and a regular here at Locked On Pac-12. John, great to have you back. Let's just dive right in. We've been talking about all these spring games this week, and our coverage of that here is going to continue next week. We will get to every single team and look at the biggest takeaways and players who are in playing time, the storylines. We'll do it for every single team. That's the nature of the show. We are Locked On Pac-12, not Locked On Pac-8. This isn't 1994. But anyway, John, I want to ask you, a lot of coaches will point to their spring game and say, well, it's a big recruiting day because we have some recruits coming in to visit. And I think it's more applicable for some schools than others. A place like UCLA or Colorado that did more of a spring showcase, I feel like it's less impactful. But other games are actual games where they're marketing it in a major way and trying to maximize attendance there. So just broadly speaking, for all these schools that want it to be an actual spring game, how much of an impact can that actually have on recruiting and the guys who get to their stadium that day?
It's a big deal, Spencer. I mean, there's only a few big spring game weekends in April every year, right? I mean, there's however many, Division 1 teams, 130 plus. Half of those are Power 5 schools, so 65 Power 5 schools. There's only 3 big weekends most Aprils. So even if you divide it evenly, which is never even, right? 20, 20, and 20, these kids got 20 Power 5 spring games they can go to any given weekend. So if they go to yours, it's a big deal. And obviously, the coaches that understand that try to package that into kind of an all-encompassing spring game weekend, and you get that kind of balance as a recruit where you're still doing your basic visit stuff, right? You're meeting with your coaches, your families, academic folks. You're putting on the jersey, photo shoot, social media, all that is happening anyway. But now you pair that with an actual game day like atmosphere. Not only the fans and the stands and all of that, but even the preparation, right? If you're a running back, you're sitting in the running backs room with the other running backs on the current team as they prepare for this game, their final checks, little audibles that they're going to use if the defense comes out in a certain formation, etc. Now you get a little bit of insight on that, and you can feel how your future position coach really, engineers that room regardless of position. So you get all of the elements of a game day, but it's less pressure than an actual game day. So the coaches are a little bit more loose and they have much more time to spend with recruits as well. So easy to sell why spring game visits are big, especially this time of year relative to the other unofficial visits that go down on these college campuses. Usually they're short and sweet on a junior day or a typical unofficial visit where there's really nothing else going on but maybe a spring practice. When it's a spring game, it really creates a lot more data points for recruits to dive into. And that's obviously important in trying to figure out where you want to go to college.
Recruiting is huge. That's why we talk about it so much here on the pod. It's I think there are some people who think like, oh, people worry about recruiting too much. Like, it's not everything. A team that didn't have a single 5-star can beat a team that had a bunch of 5-stars. It happens, but generally speaking, the teams that recruit the best are also the teams that win the most in college football when you look up at the end of each season. Again, not always true, but broadly speaking, that's applicable. The transfer portal now has created an entire new section on 24/7 Sports where you have your high school recruiting class ranking and you have your transfer portal rating because of the one-time exemption. There's just more guys in the portal than ever. So I wanted to ask you, John, as you look at 2022 football in the Pac-12, who do you think are going to be the most impactful transfers? And let's look beyond Caleb Williams because that is painfully obvious for
So you
everybody
took one of
that
my answers, man. Come on.
yeah, I know that. I'm sure you really had to dig deep and really get into the nitty-gritty about how impactful guys like that could be. But beyond Caleb Williams, who's going to start, he'll be the best quarterback in the Pac-12. He's a top prospect in the 2024 NFL draft. So we know that is going to make an impact. But what other names are out there that you see as coming into the Pac-12 and are names that Pac-12 fans are going to become familiar with because they'll be playing a lot and making a lot of plays on Saturdays?
Well, even just at the quarterback position, I mean, that's the natural place to start beyond Caleb. There's been a ton of movement in and out of the Pac-12. I think one of the early kind of under the radar wins in the portal was Cam Ward picking Wazoo over a lot of Power Five options. Kid out of Incarnate Word in Texas, legitimate dual threat, big arm, really showcased a lot on the field last year. And there's a lot of people that think he's got NFL upside. So Wazoo bringing in someone like that, I think is a pretty big deal. I think Bo Nix at Oregon, hello. I mean, obviously a ton of experience, and maybe as much experience as any quarterback that hit the portal. Bo Nix as a 3-year starter at Auburn, going up to Oregon. And then I'll throw in a possibility. I saw Emory Jones from Florida might be visiting or visited Arizona State, I should say.
Mhm.
Obviously, they're in a huge market for the quarterback position, having lost Jayden Daniels. They got a ton of young, inexperienced quarterbacks on the roster, but no game experience. So I think if they can solidify Emory Jones, that would be nice for their future. But beyond the quarterback position, there's a few great fits that I found in tracking some of the Pac-12 transfers. Arizona had a great top 25 recruiting class, a couple SI99 recruits included in that class, but they supplemented that class with the portal really, really well. And I think Hunter Echols was probably their top pickup. I remember him as a recruit, blue chip pass rusher, legitimate off the edge. He's got some off ball ability as well. So Arizona needs help in a lot of areas, and certainly defenses and rushing the passer is one of them. And Hunter Echols could be their best player as soon as they open up things in 2022. I think staying in the front seven, I go up to Utah. We know what the Utes have brought to the table from a tone setting standpoint. Obviously, coming off of really the best run at the end of the season of any school in the Pac-12. And they're known for defense, right? They're returning a lot of offensive firepower, but defensively, Devin Lloyd's obviously about to get drafted here as soon as the draft kicks off here on Thursday. So how do you replace him? And I think they brought in some talent at the high school level, but I love what they brought in through the portal in Muhammad Diabate, the linebacker, who's as versatile as it gets. Multi-year starter at Florida who has off-ball inside linebacker experience. But really, as a recruit, when Diabate came up, he was a pure, freaky first step kind of edge rusher. And he told me when he was in the portal that he was going through the process looking for a balance between the two. And at Utah, I think he'll play inside backer on early downs. And then when the passing game is premium, he'll be able to use that pass rushing prowess to get after the passer. So I really like that pickup for Utah, which hasn't been as busy in the portal as some other programs. So those are probably my top few. I like Cam Bright at Washington, another kid with a ton of experience coming over from Pitt. And then some under the radar offensive gets. Jake Bobo at UCLA,
Yep.
coming over from Duke, over 100 catches the last 2 years. He's really a big possession target. Now with DTR coming back, I think you got to feel good as a Bruin fan. Jameis Griffin at Oregon State. They need to stabilize that offense with the running game first. And this is a big downhill, compact back that I think could fit in well for the Beavers as well. So we got a little sleeper recruits to talk about in the portal, but I really like those additions otherwise.
Yeah, Bobo is someone who's generated plenty of attention from UCLA's camp this year. Chip Kelly recently said he's kind of emerging as a potential wide receiver one, and they've got no Kyle Phillips, no Greg Dulcich, and no Chase Cota, who transferred up north to Oregon where his dad played. So there's a little bit of a void there. And Casimir Allen, if you've watched him play, he is as explosive of a player as there is in college football, but he's not typically a possession guy. He's give it to him on a jet sweep and take some downfield shots. But if you're talking about possession receivers, I like that Jake Bobo pick right there by John Garcia Jr., the director of recruiting for Sports Illustrated. We appreciate your insight as always, John. We look forward to seeing you next week too.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching the show. See you next week and have a wonderful rest of your day.